The rain came down in sheets that October evening, turning the quiet Sacramento street into a river of reflected streetlights. 7-year-old Emma Martinez knelt on her bed, her small hands pressed against the cold window pane, her breath fogging the glass in little circles. She rubbed it away impatiently with her pajama sleeve, straining to see down the empty street. "Daddy's late again," she whispered to her stuffed bunny, Mr. Hoppers, who sat propped against her pillow. Emma's mother had already tucked her in twice, but she couldn't sleep. Not until she saw her father's old pickup truck turn the corner and pull into their driveway. It was their nightly ritual. She'd wave from the window, and he'd wave back before coming inside. The clock on her nightstand glowed 6:45 p.m. Any minute now. Emma watched Mrs. Henderson across the street struggle with her umbrella, fighting against the wind. 2 houses down, the Johnsons' porch light flickered. Everything seemed normal on Maple Street, the kind of neighborhood where everyone knew everyone, where kids rode bikes until dark, and where nothing bad ever happened. Then she saw Dr. Chen. The kind pediatrician who lived 3 doors down was walking briskly along the sidewalk, her bright red raincoat visible even through the downpour. Dr. Chen was the one who'd given Emma a lollipop after her checkup last month and told her she was brave as a lion when she didn't cry during her shot. Emma smiled, pressing closer to the window, thinking she might wave. That's when the headlights appeared. They came fast, too fast, from the north end of the street. A dark blue SUV, its engine roaring unnaturally loud in the quiet evening. Emma's smile faded. Something felt wrong. The vehicle wasn't slowing down for the residential speed limit. It was accelerating. "Slow down," Emma whispered, as if the driver could hear her. Dr. Chen stepped off the curb at the crosswalk, checking both directions. She had the right of way. The walk signal was lit. She took 2 steps into the street. Time seemed to stretch like taffy. Emma watched in frozen horror as the blue SUV barreled toward the crosswalk. Dr. Chen looked up at the last second, her face illuminated in the harsh headlights. Her mouth opened in a scream Emma couldn't hear through the glass. She tried to jump back, but it was too late. The impact was sickening, a sound Emma would hear in her nightmares for months to come. Even through the closed window and the pounding rain, she heard it. A terrible thud, followed by the screech of brakes that came too late. Dr. Chen's body flew through the air like a rag doll, her red raincoat a bright streak against the dark pavement. She landed 15 feet away, crumpled and motionless. Emma's scream caught in her throat, strangled by shock. Her hands pressed harder against the window, leaving small prints in the fog. "No, no, no," she whimpered, tears streaming down her face. The SUV had skidded to a stop, its brake lights glowing red in the rain. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened. A man stepped out into the rain. Emma watched, transfixed by horror, as the bearded man walked slowly toward Dr. Chen's body. He wasn't running. He wasn't calling for help. He just stood there looking down at what he'd done. The rain soaked his jacket, but he didn't seem to notice. He stared at Dr. Chen for what felt like an eternity, 5 seconds, maybe 10, as if trying to decide what to do. Then he looked up, directly at Emma's window. Their eyes locked across the dark, rain-soaked street. Emma's heart stopped. She could see his face clearly under the streetlight, the dark beard, the rectangular glasses now spotted with rain, the wide, panicked eyes. He was younger than her daddy, maybe 40. He looked scared. No, terrified. Emma counted without meaning to. 1, 2, 3 seconds. It felt like hours. In that moment she saw everything, the guilt in his eyes, the decision forming behind them. He knew she'd seen. She knew he knew. The world narrowed to just the 2 of them, connected by the terrible secret of what had just happened. Then the spell broke. The man's face hardened. He looked down at Dr. Chen one more time, then ran back to his SUV. The door slammed. The engine revved. Tires squealed as he accelerated away, fishtailing slightly on the wet pavement before disappearing around the corner, heading south. "Mom, Daddy," Emma finally found her voice scrambling off her bed. Her legs tangled in her blankets and she fell hard on the floor. "Mom." Rosa Martinez burst through the bedroom door, her face alarmed. "Emma, what's wrong? What happened?" But Emma couldn't speak anymore. She pointed frantically at the window, sobbing. Her mother rushed over and looked out, seeing Dr. Chen's red raincoat lying still in the middle of the street. "Dios mío!" Rosa grabbed her phone, dialing 911 as she ran. Emma stayed frozen by her window, Mr. Hoppers clutched to her chest. She watched as neighbors emerged from their houses. She watched as Mrs. Henderson screamed and ran to Dr. Chen. She watched as the ambulance arrived, its red lights painting the street in strobing colors. She watched as they covered Dr. Chen with a yellow tarp. And she couldn't stop seeing his face, the bearded man with glasses who'd looked up at her window, the man who'd made a choice to run instead of help, the man who'd driven away and left Dr. Chen lying in the rain. Emma's father arrived home 20 minutes later to find police cars blocking the street and his daughter being interviewed by a gentle female officer. But Emma had gone silent again, shock sealing her lips. She shook her head to every question, clutching her mother and trembling. She wouldn't speak about it, not that night, not for months. But every single night she drew pictures. The blue SUV with the dent on the passenger side. The license plate she'd memorized, 7KB something 3. And the face, always the face, of the man who'd looked up at her window before he ran. The man who didn't know that a little girl with a good memory would eventually find her voice. And when she did, nothing would ever be the same. Detective Michael Rodriguez sat in his cramped office at the Sacramento Police Department, surrounded by the ghosts of unsolved cases. But none haunted him quite like the manila folder spread across his desk. CHEN. Sarah, Hit and Run Case 2020-411847. 3 months had passed since that rainy October night, and he was no closer to finding Dr. Chen's killer than he'd been on day one. "Damn it," he muttered, rubbing his tired eyes. The clock showed 11:47 p.m. He should have gone home hours ago, but his wife understood. She always understood when a case got under his skin, and this one had burrowed deep. Rodriguez picked up the crime scene photos for the 100th time. Dr. Sarah Chen, 38 years old, pediatrician, mother of 2 young boys, beloved in the community. She'd been walking home from her clinic, taking her usual route. Dead before the ambulance arrived. Internal bleeding, multiple fractures, severe head trauma. The medical examiner said she died within minutes of impact. Someone had hit her and driven away, leaving her to die in the rain like she was nothing. The detective's jaw clenched. 22 years on the force, and it never got easier, especially when the victims were good people, and by all accounts, Sarah Chen had been exceptional. His desk phone rang, jarring him from his thoughts. "Rodriguez." "Detective, it's Marcus down in the lab. I've been going over that paint sample analysis again. I'm sorry, but there's just not enough for a definitive match. Dark blue paint, probably a Ford or Chevy SUV from the last 5 years. That's the best I can give you." Rodriguez sighed. "Thanks, Marcus, I appreciate you trying. I wish I had better news. This one's tough." Tough didn't begin to cover it. Rodriguez stood and walked to his evidence board, studying the timeline he'd constructed. 6:43 p.m. Dr. Chen leaves her clinic. 6:45 p.m. she's seen by a neighbor entering Maple Street. 6:47 p.m. estimated time of impact based on 911 calls. The first call came in at 6:49 p.m. from a Mrs. Henderson. 2 minutes. In 2 minutes the killer had vanished. "Someone saw something," Rodriguez said to the empty room. "Someone always sees something." But 3 months of canvassing the neighborhood had yielded almost nothing useful. Mrs. Henderson heard the impact but was inside her house. The Johnsons were watching TV with the volume up. Mr. Patterson was in his garage. Everyone heard the crash, but no one actually witnessed it. Well, almost no one. There were conflicting reports about the vehicle. Mrs. Henderson thought she'd seen a dark sedan speeding away. Mr. Patterson insisted it was a black truck. A teenager 3 blocks over reported seeing a blue SUV driving erratically, but couldn't provide details. The descriptions were all over the map. Security cameras, practically non-existent in this older neighborhood. The one working camera, mounted on a house 2 blocks away, had captured only a blurry image of a dark-colored vehicle passing by seconds after the estimated impact time. The license plate was completely obscured by rain and distance. Rodriguez returned to his desk and opened his notebook, reading through his interview notes again. Every resident on Maple Street, every business owner within a mile radius, every person who might have been driving through that evening. Hundreds of interviews, thousands of hours, nothing solid. The pressure was mounting from every direction. Captain Morrison had been sympathetic at first, but 3 months with zero progress was testing even her patience. "The Chen family deserves answers, Mike," she told him yesterday. "The media's making us look incompetent. I need results." The media had indeed been relentless. "Killer still at large," screamed the headlines. "Police baffled in CHEN hit and run." Talk radio hosts criticized the department's incompetence. Social media exploded with theories and accusations. But worse than the media pressure was facing Dr. Chen's husband. David Chen had come to the station twice a week for the first month, his 2 young boys in tow, asking the same question: "Have you found who killed my wife?" His eyes were hollow, his grief palpable. The boys, ages 6 and 4, didn't fully understand why Mommy wasn't coming home. Last week, David had organized a press conference on the steps of City Hall. Rodriguez had stood in the back, watching this broken man plead for anyone with information to come forward. "My boys ask me every night when we're going to catch the person who took their mother," David said, his voice cracking. "And I don't have an answer. Please, if you saw anything at all, come forward. Help us find justice for Sarah." The tips had flooded in after that, dozens of them. Rodriguez and his team had chased every single lead, all dead ends. People thought they'd seen something, or someone, or knew someone who might have known something. None of it panned out. Rodriguez leaned back in his chair, feeling the weight of failure pressing down on his chest. He'd worked hit and runs before. He knew the statistics. After the first 48 hours, the chances of solving the case dropped dramatically. After 3 months, they were working a cold case now, whether anyone wanted to admit it or not. His phone buzzed with a text from his wife. "Come home, me Ammer, you need sleep." He texted back, "Soon, I promise." But he didn't move. Instead, he pulled out the neighborhood map again, studying Maple Street. His finger traced the route Dr. Chen had walked that night. Something was nagging at him, had been nagging at him for weeks. A feeling that he was missing something obvious. The houses on Maple Street faced the road. Windows overlooked the street. Someone must have been looking out at that exact moment. Someone must have seen the vehicle, the driver, something useful. But everyone he'd interviewed claimed they hadn't seen anything until after the impact. "Unless someone's lying," Rodriguez murmured, "or unless someone's too scared to talk." He made a note to do another canvass of the neighborhood next week. Maybe someone's memory had improved. Maybe someone's conscience had started bothering them. Meanwhile, across town on that same street, Emma Martinez lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling. Sleep wouldn't come. It rarely did anymore. Her drawings were hidden under her mattress, dozens of them, each one showing the same scene, the same face, the same numbers and letters. 7KB-3. She'd memorized them perfectly that night. The question mark represented the number or letter she couldn't quite see clearly through the rain, but the rest was crystal clear in her mind. So was the face, the bearded man with rectangular glasses who'd looked up at her window. Emma clutched Mr. Hoppers tighter, tears sliding down her cheeks. She wanted to tell. She wanted to help Dr. Chen's family. She'd seen David Chen at the grocery store last week with his boys, and her heart had shattered all over again. But every time she opened her mouth to tell her parents, to tell anyone, fear strangled the words before they could escape. What if he came back? What if he remembered her window? What if he figured out which house was hers? The bearded man knew someone had seen him. He'd looked right at her. What if he was looking for her right now? Emma squeezed her eyes shut, but she could still see him, standing in the rain, staring up at her window, making the choice to run. In her second-grade classroom, Mrs. Patterson had noticed the change in her star pupil. Emma barely spoke anymore. She sat alone at recess, drawing in her notebook. She flinched at loud noises. She asked to go to the nurse's office at least once a day, complaining of stomachaches. Emma's not herself, Mrs. Patterson had told the school counselor. Something's wrong, but she won't talk about it. The counselor had tried. Emma's parents had tried. Everyone had tried. But Emma's secret stayed locked inside, a weight growing heavier with each passing day. Neither Detective Rodriguez nor Emma Martinez knew it yet, but their paths were destined to cross. The detective searching desperately for a witness. The little girl desperate to speak but paralyzed by fear. 3 months of silence. 3 months of a killer walking free. 3 months of a secret that was eating a 7-year-old alive from the inside out. But secrets, Rodriguez knew from experience, had a way of coming out eventually. The question was, would it be in time? January brought cold, crisp mornings to Sacramento, and with it, a glimmer of hope that Emma Martinez didn't yet recognize. The second-grade classroom at Lincoln Elementary buzzed with excitement. Mrs. Patterson clapped her hands for attention. Boys and girls, settle down. We have a special assembly this morning. Officer Wallace from the Sacramento Police Department is here to talk about community safety. Emma's stomach tightened. Police. The word made her think of that night, of the flashing red and blue lights, of the yellow tarp covering Dr. Chen's body. She gripped her pencil harder, her knuckles turning white. In the gymnasium, 200 elementary students sat cross-legged on the polished floor. Emma positioned herself in the back row, trying to make herself invisible. She'd gotten good at that over the past 3 months, disappearing into corners, blending into backgrounds, avoiding attention. Officer Jamie Wallace stood at the front, her uniform crisp and professional, but her smile warm and genuine. She was younger than Emma expected, maybe 30, with kind brown eyes that seemed to really see people. Good morning, everyone. Officer Wallace's voice was friendly, not scary at all. How many of you want to be police officers when you grow up? Several hands shot up. Emma kept hers firmly in her lap. That's great, but you know what? You don't have to be a police officer to be a hero. Every single one of you can be a hero in your own community. Officer Wallace walked slowly between the rows of children, making eye contact with as many as she could. Does anyone know what makes someone a hero? Super strength, a kindergartner shouted. Officer Wallace smiled. Good guess, but no. Real heroes don't need superpowers. Real heroes are brave. Emma's heart began to pound. But here's the thing about bravery. Officer Wallace knelt down to the children's level. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. Being brave means you do the right thing even when you're terrified. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back quickly. Sometimes being brave means standing up to a bully. Sometimes it means helping someone who's hurt. And sometimes, Officer Wallace's voice softened, sometimes being brave means speaking up when you've seen something wrong, even if you're scared to tell. Emma's breath caught in her throat. I want to tell you all a story, Officer Wallace continued, settling into a chair at the front. When I was 8 years old, not much older than some of you, I saw my neighbor's house get broken into. I was playing in my backyard and I saw a man climb through their window. I was so scared. I ran inside and hid in my room. The gymnasium was completely silent now. Even the kindergartners had stopped fidgeting. For 3 days I didn't tell anyone. I was afraid the bad man would come after me if I told. I was afraid no one would believe me. I was afraid I'd get in trouble somehow. But you know what I was most afraid of? Emma leaned forward slightly, despite herself. I was most afraid of that feeling in my stomach, that heavy, sick feeling that comes from keeping a secret that's too big for one person to carry. Officer Wallace's eyes scanned the crowd. How many of you have ever had a secret that made your stomach hurt? Slowly, tentatively, hands began to rise. Emma's hand trembled in her lap, wanting to rise but unable to move. Finally, I told my mom, and you know what happened. She hugged me and told me I was brave. The police caught the man. My neighbors got their stuff back, and that heavy feeling in my stomach, it went away. Officer Wallace stood up. So here's what I want you all to remember. If you've seen something that scared you, something wrong, something that keeps you up at night, it's not your job to carry that secret alone. It's not your burden. There are people who can help. Your parents, your teachers, police officers, we're here to help carry the heavy things. Emma felt her mother's words echo in her mind from weeks ago. Mija, you can tell me anything, anything at all. But Emma had just shaken her head and gone to her room to draw more pictures. Being brave sometimes means being scared and speaking up anyway, Officer Wallace concluded. Because the right thing is more important than the easy thing. Can everyone remember that? A chorus of "Yes, Officer Wallace" filled the gymnasium. As the students filed out, Emma's feet felt like lead. Her classmates chattered excitedly around her, but she couldn't hear them. All she could hear was Officer Wallace's voice. Sometimes being brave means speaking up when you've seen something wrong, even if you're scared to tell. Emma stopped walking. Her classmates flowed around her like water around a rock. Mrs. Patterson called back, "Emma, are you coming, sweetie?" But Emma wasn't moving. She was standing in the hallway, watching Officer Wallace gather her materials at the front of the gym. The officer was alone now, packing up her presentation display. Emma's heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. Her hands were shaking. Her legs felt weak. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to stay quiet, to keep the secret buried. But then she thought of David Chen's face at that press conference, begging for help. She thought of his 2 little boys who would never see their mother again. She thought of Dr. Chen's kind smile when she'd given Emma that lollipop and called her brave as a lion. Brave as a lion. Emma's feet started moving before her brain fully processed the decision. One step, then another, down the hallway toward the gymnasium. Each step felt like walking through cement, but she kept going. Officer Wallace looked up as Emma appeared in the doorway, a tiny figure silhouetted against the bright hallway lights. "Hello there," Officer Wallace said gently. "Did you forget something?" Emma opened her mouth. Nothing came out. She tried again. Her voice was barely a whisper, so quiet Officer Wallace had to lean down to hear. I saw something." Officer Wallace froze, her instincts immediately recognizing something significant in the child's trembling voice and terrified eyes. She slowly set down her materials and moved closer, kneeling to Emma's eye level. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Emma Martinez." Her voice was shaking so badly the words almost didn't form. "Okay, Emma, that was very brave of you to come talk to me. Can you tell me what you saw?" Emma's eyes filled with tears. She'd held this secret for 93 days, 93 nights of nightmares and drawings and guilt. The words felt like they were physically stuck in her throat, choking her. I saw the car." The words came out in a rush, barely coherent. "The car that hit the doctor lady, Dr. Chen. I saw it from my window. I saw everything." Officer Wallace's professional mask slipped for just a moment, shock registering in her eyes. The Chen case. Every officer in Sacramento knew about the Chen case. It was the department's biggest frustration, the case that kept them all up at night. Emma, Officer Wallace said very carefully, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I need you to know something very important. You are safe. Whatever you tell me, you are safe. Do you understand? Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face now. Can you tell me where you live? Maple Street, number 847, right across from where it happened. Officer Wallace's hands trembled slightly as she pulled out her phone. Emma, is it okay if I call Detective Rodriguez? He's been working very hard to find out who hurt Dr. Chen. He needs to hear what you have to say. Will the man come after me? Emma's voice broke. He looked at my window, he saw me. What if he knows where I live? Officer Wallace wanted to promise that nothing would happen, but she was too honest for empty promises. Instead, she took Emma's small hands in hers. Emma, listen to me. We will protect you, I promise you that. And you know what else? That man. He's scared right now. He's scared because he did something terrible and he thinks he got away with it. But you're braver than him. You're braver than any criminal I've ever met. Emma's chin quivered. I've been drawing pictures every night. I can't stop seeing his face. That's okay. That's actually really good, Officer Wallace said softly. Emma, you might have just solved the case that's been keeping our whole department up at night. You might have just given Dr. Chen's family the answers they've been praying for. Really? Really? You are incredibly brave, do you know that? Emma shook her head. She didn't feel brave. She felt terrified and sick and like she might throw up right there in the gymnasium. But she'd done it, she'd spoken up. The secret was finally out. Detective Michael Rodriguez nearly crashed his car racing to Lincoln Elementary School. Officer Wallace's call had been brief but electrifying. Mike, I've got a witness to the Chen hit-and-run. A 7-year-old girl. She saw everything. 20 minutes later, Rodriguez sat in the school counselor's office, trying to keep his hands from shaking. Across from him sat Emma Martinez, her parents on either side of her, and the most extraordinary collection of drawings he'd ever seen spread across the table. Sweet Jesus, he breathed, picking up one of the crayon drawings with trembling fingers. Miguel Martinez squeezed his daughter's shoulder. We had no idea. She's been hiding these under her mattress for 3 months. When Officer Wallace called, we went home and found over 50 of them. Rodriguez couldn't tear his eyes away from the images. Each drawing showed the same scene from slightly different angles, as if Emma had been trying to process what she'd witnessed by recreating it over and over. But what stunned him wasn't the repetition. It was the detail. The first drawing showed a dark blue SUV in profile. Emma had carefully colored it with a blue crayon, then added a distinctive detail, a dent on the passenger side front panel just above the wheel well. She'd drawn it again and again in different pictures, always in the same location. Emma, Rodriguez said gently, can you tell me about this dent? Emma's small voice was barely audible. It was shaped like a half-moon. I could see it when the streetlight hit the car, right there. She pointed to her drawing with a tiny finger. Rodriguez felt his pulse quicken, a specific identifying feature. This was real. He picked up another drawing. This one showed the rear of the vehicle as it drove away. Emma had drawn a license plate, and on it she'd carefully printed letters and numbers. 7KB-3. What's this ? Sweetheart? I couldn't see that one clearly, Emma explained, her confidence growing slightly as she walked through her drawings. The rain was too hard and he was driving away, but I'm sure about the others. 7KB and then 3 at the end. Rodriguez's mind was already racing. California license plates, dark blue SUV, 3 confirmed characters and 1 unknown. That narrowed the search significantly. But it was the third type of drawing that made Rodriguez's heart stop. The face. Emma had drawn the driver's face at least 20 times, always the same features, a dark beard, rectangular glasses, a narrow face, worried eyes. In some drawings she'd added details. The way his hair was slightly longer on top, the way his glasses sat low on his nose, even the collar of his jacket. "Emma, how did you see his face so clearly?" Emma's eyes welled up with tears. "Because he got out of the car. He stood in the rain and looked at Dr. Chen lying on the ground, and then," her voice dropped to a whisper, "then he looked up at my window. We looked at each other." "For how long?" "I counted 1, 2, 3 seconds." Emma demonstrated, meeting Rodriguez's eyes and holding his gaze. "Like this." He looked scared. Then he ran back to his car and drove away. Rosa Martinez wrapped her arm around her daughter, tears streaming down her own face. "My baby has been living with this for 3 months. Why didn't we see? Why didn't she tell us?" "She was scared," Officer Wallace said softly from the corner. "And that's normal, but she's being brave now." Rodriguez carefully gathered the drawings. "Emma, I need to borrow these. Is that okay? They're going to help us find the man who hurt Dr. Chen." Emma nodded solemnly. "Will you catch him?" "With your help, absolutely." Back at the station 2 hours later, Rodriguez's office was a flurry of activity. Captain Morrison stood over his shoulder as he fed Emma's license plate information into the DMV database. "You really think this is solid?" Morrison asked. "Captain, that little girl has a photographic memory. Look at these drawings. She's drawn the same dent in the exact same location 50 times, the same face, the same partial plate. This isn't imagination. This is eyewitness testimony." The computer beeped, results loading. Rodriguez held his breath as the screen populated with possibilities. California plates starting with 7KB and ending in 3. Dark blue SUVs registered in Sacramento County and surrounding areas. 23 possible matches appeared. "Start running them," Morrison ordered. "I want every single one of these vehicles checked." Rodriguez was already scanning the list when one entry made him stop cold. License plate 7KBH43. Vehicle 2019 Ford Explorer, dark blue. Registered owner Marcus Webb, 42, Sacramento. "Look at this," Rodriguez said, his voice tight with excitement. He clicked on the registration details. The address was in East Sacramento, about 4 miles from Maple Street. He pulled up Webb's driver's license photo. Dark beard, rectangular glasses, narrow face. "That's him," Rodriguez breathed. "That's the face Emma drew." Morrison leaned closer. "You sure?" Rodriguez laid Emma's drawing next to the DMV photo. The resemblance was uncanny, the shape of the beard, the style of glasses, the proportions of the face. Emma had captured it all. "Run his record," Morrison commanded. Officer Wallace pulled up Marcus Webb's file. 2 speeding tickets in the last 3 years. Suspended license 6 months ago for failure to appear in court for a traffic violation. He's been driving on a suspended license. "Which means he had extra reason to run," Rodriguez said grimly. "He hit someone, he knows he's driving illegally, he panics." "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," Morrison cautioned. "We need to find this vehicle. If it's the one, there will be damage." Rodriguez was already grabbing his jacket. "I'm bringing him in now." "Wait," Morrison held up a hand. "Get a warrant for the vehicle first. Do this by the book, Mike. If this goes to trial, I want every piece of evidence airtight." 3 hours later, Rodriguez and 4 other officers stood outside a modest single-story house on Elm Street. The warrant had come through. A dark blue Ford Explorer sat in the driveway. But something was wrong. "It's been repainted," Officer Wallace said, running her hand along the hood. "This is fresh paint, maybe a few weeks old." Rodriguez's jaw clenched. He tried to cover it up, check the passenger side. They walked around the vehicle. Even under the fresh gray paint, the dent was visible, a distinctive half-moon shape on the front passenger panel, exactly where Emma had drawn it. "We've got him," Rodriguez said. He strode to the front door and knocked hard. "Marcus Webb, Sacramento Police, open up." Footsteps inside. The door cracked open, and a bearded face with rectangular glasses peered out. Rodriguez felt a surge of satisfaction. It was him, exactly as Emma had drawn. Marcus Webb. Yes, Webb's voice was cautious, his eyes darting to the police cars in his driveway. I'm Detective Rodriguez. We have a warrant to search your vehicle in connection with the hit-and-run death of Dr. Sarah Chen on October 15th. The color drained from Webb's face. His hand gripped the doorframe so hard his knuckles turned white. For a long moment he said nothing, just stared at the Explorer in his driveway as if it had betrayed him. I want a lawyer, he finally said, his voice hollow. That's your right. Marcus Webb, you're under arrest for vehicular manslaughter and leaving the scene of an accident. Rodriguez pulled out his handcuffs. Turn around. As Rodriguez read Webb's rights, forensic technicians were already swarming the SUV. Under the fresh gray paint, they would find traces of the original dark blue. In the garage, they would find paint cans and supplies. Security footage from a body shop would show Webb purchasing paint 2 weeks after the accident. His cell phone records would place him on Maple Street at 6:47 p.m. on October 15th. But the most damning evidence sat in Rodriguez's office in a manila folder labeled Martinez. Emma witness drawings. 50 drawings, one terrified little girl's photographic memory, and a 3-second moment when a killer looked up at a window and met the eyes of the person who would bring him to justice. As Webb was loaded into the patrol car, his face buried in his hands, Rodriguez pulled out his phone and dialed. Mr. Chen, this is Detective Rodriguez. I have news. The Sacramento County Superior Courthouse had never seen anything like it. News vans lined the street 3 deep, satellite dishes pointed skyward like flowers toward the sun. Reporters jostled for position on the courthouse steps, their cameras trained on every person entering the building. The case of the People v. Marcus Webb had captured the nation's attention. Inside Courtroom 4, Assistant District Attorney Patricia Gomez sat at the prosecution table, reviewing her notes for the 100th time. Her hands were steady, but her stomach churned. 20 years as a prosecutor, and she'd never felt pressure like this. Behind her in the first row of the gallery sat David Chen. He looked older than his 42 years, grief having carved deep lines into his face. He clutched a framed photograph of Sarah, her graduation photo from medical school, her smile bright and full of promise. His parents sat beside him, and Sarah's sister, all of them wearing blue ribbons pinned to their lapels. Sarah's favorite color. The gallery was packed to capacity, standing room only, every seat filled with reporters, court watchers, and community members who'd loved Dr. Chen. The bailiff had already turned away over 50 people who couldn't fit inside. At the defense table, Marcus Webb sat in a crisp navy suit, his beard neatly trimmed, his rectangular glasses catching the fluorescent lights. He looked nothing like the panicked man who'd been arrested 3 months ago. His attorney, Richard Hartley, had seen to that. Richard Hartley was a legend in Sacramento legal circles, and not the good kind of legend. At 58, he'd built his reputation on one simple principle: win at any cost. He specialized in getting guilty clients acquitted through aggressive cross-examination and procedural technicalities. His track record was impressive and terrifying in equal measure. All rise, the bailiff's voice boomed. The Superior Court of Sacramento County is now in session, the Honorable Judge Catherine Morrison presiding. Judge Morrison entered, her black robes flowing behind her. At 61, she was known for running a tight courtroom and having zero tolerance for theatrics. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her sharp blue eyes missed nothing. "Be seated," she commanded, and the courtroom rustled as everyone complied. "We're here for the trial of the People versus Marcus Webb. Are both sides ready to proceed?" "Ready for the people, Your Honor," Gomez stood confidently. "Ready for the defense." Hartley's voice was smooth as silk. with an undertone of arrogance that made Gomez's jaw clench. The first 4 days of trial had been a brutal chess match. Day 1, Gomez had laid out her case in opening statements. The evidence will show that Marcus Webb, driving on a suspended license, struck and killed Dr. Sarah Chen on October 15th. He didn't stop to help. He didn't call 911. He fled the scene, went home, and attempted to cover up his crime by repainting his vehicle. But the truth has a way of coming out, ladies and gentlemen, because a 7-year-old girl saw everything. Hartley's opening statement had been a masterclass in creating doubt. Ladies and gentlemen, the prosecution wants you to convict my client based on the wild imagination of a child who couldn't possibly have seen what she claims to have seen on a dark, rainy night from a second-story window. They have no forensic evidence definitively linking my client's vehicle to this tragedy. They have no witnesses who actually saw the accident occur. What they have is desperation and a rush to judgment. Day 2 brought the forensic experts. Dr. Lisa Yamamoto, the medical examiner, testified about Sarah's injuries, blunt force trauma consistent with being struck by a vehicle traveling approximately 35–40 miles per hour. The defense didn't challenge her findings, they challenged the relevance. Marcus Chen, the forensics analyst, explained the paint transfer found on Sarah's raincoat. The paint chips are consistent with a 2019 Ford Explorer in Velocity Blue. Hartley pounced during cross-examination, consistent with, not definitely from. It's impossible to make a definitive match without the original paint, Chen admitted. So thousands of vehicles could have left this paint transfer. Theoretically, yes. No further questions. Hartley sat down with a satisfied smile. Day 3 was security footage day. The prosecution played grainy video from a gas station 2 miles from the crime scene, timestamped 6:54 p.m. on October 15th, 7 minutes after the accident. A dark blue SUV matching Webb's Explorer pulled in, visible damage on the front end. "Can you definitively identify the driver?" Hartley asked the gas station attendant on the stand. "The video quality isn't great, and he didn't come inside." "So that's a no. Can you even definitively prove that's my client's vehicle?" "It looks like it." "Looks like not is, thank you." Hartley dismissed him with a wave. Day 4 brought Detective Rodriguez to the stand. He testified about Webb's suspicious behavior, the hasty repaint job, the cell phone records placing him near the scene, the suspended license giving him motive to flee. But Hartley systematically dismantled each point. "Detective, you found paint supplies in my client's garage, correct?" "Yes." "Is it illegal to repaint your own vehicle?" "No, but..." "Simple yes or no, please." Rodriguez gritted his teeth. "No." "And these cell phone records, they show my client was in the general vicinity, not at the exact location, correct?" "The tower covers..." "Yes or no, detective?" "The tower covers a 2-mile radius." "So he could have been anywhere within 2 miles. He could have been at home, at a store, visiting a friend." "Technically yes, but..." "Thank you, detective. No further questions." By the end of Day 4, Gomez could feel the case slipping away. The jury looked confused, uncertain. Hartley had done exactly what he was famous for. He'd taken solid circumstantial evidence and made it look like Swiss cheese. That evening, Gomez met with Rodriguez in her office. "He's tearing us apart." "We still have Emma," Rodriguez said, though his own confidence was wavering. "A 7-year-old against Richard Hartley." Gomez rubbed her temples. "Do you know what he's going to do to her on that stand?" "She's stronger than you think." "She's a child, Mike. A traumatized child who's going to be cross-examined by a man who makes grown adults cry in court." At the Martinez home that same evening, Emma sat at the kitchen table with her parents, picking at her dinner. Tomorrow was Day 5. Tomorrow she would testify. "You don't have to do this, Mija," her mother said softly. "Ada Gomez said we can still back out." But Emma shook her head. She'd come this far. She'd found her voice. She'd seen the hope in David Chen's eyes when she'd met him last week, how he'd knelt down and taken her hands and whispered, "Thank you for being brave for my Sarah." "I want to," Emma said quietly. "Dr. Chen was nice to me. She deserves the truth." Miguel Martinez looked at his daughter with a mixture of pride and fear. "That man's lawyer is going to ask you hard questions, Emma. He's going to try to confuse you." "I know, Detective Rodriguez told me." Emma's small jaw set with determination. "But I know what I saw, Daddy, I know." Back at the courthouse, in a holding cell beneath the building, Marcus Webb sat on a narrow bench, his head in his hands. His smugness from the courtroom was gone. He'd watched the jury's faces, seen the doubt Hartley had planted, and felt hope rising in his chest. But tomorrow, that little girl would take the stand. The little girl from the window, the one whose eyes had haunted his dreams for 4 months. He'd underestimated her once on that rainy night when he'd looked up and seen a small face in the window. He'd thought, just a kid. She won't tell, she's too scared. Now, that decision might cost him everything. Day 5 dawned cold and clear. By 8:00 a.m. the courtroom was packed again. The tension was palpable, electric. Everyone knew what was coming. At 9:05 a.m., Judge Morrison took her seat and surveyed the courtroom with her penetrating gaze. "Ms. Gomez, call your next witness." Patricia Gomez stood, her voice clear and strong despite the butterflies in her stomach. "Your Honor, the people call Emma Martinez to the stand." The courtroom doors opened, and a tiny girl in a yellow dress, her hair in 2 neat braids, walked slowly down the center aisle toward the witness stand, the fate of justice resting on her small shoulders. The courtroom held its collective breath as Emma Martinez approached the witness stand. Her yellow dress seemed impossibly bright against the dark wood paneling, and her small Mary Jane shoes made soft clicking sounds on the polished floor that echoed like heartbeats in the silence. The bailiff brought over a booster seat, placing it carefully on the witness chair. Emma climbed up, her feet dangling several inches above the floor even with the boost. She looked impossibly small, impossibly young, dwarfed by the massive witness box that had been built for adults. Judge Morrison leaned forward, her stern expression softening. "Good morning, sweetheart. My name is Judge Morrison. Do you know why you're here today?" Emma's voice was barely audible. "To tell the truth about what I saw." "That's exactly right. Now I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand." Emma complied, her small hand trembling. "Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" "I promise." "You may be seated." Ada Gomez approached with a gentle smile, holding a glass of water. "Hi, Emma. Would you like some water before we start?" Emma shook her head, gripping the arms of the chair. "Okay, can you tell the court your full name and how old you are?" "Emma Sophia Martinez. I'm 7 years old. I'll be 8 in April." "And where do you go to school?" "Lincoln Elementary. I'm in 2nd grade. Mrs. Patterson is my teacher." Gomez walked Emma through the basics slowly, letting her get comfortable. What grade she was in. Her favorite subject, art. Her favorite color, purple. Simple questions designed to calm her nerves and show the jury that she was a normal, credible child. Then came the hard part. "Emma, I need to ask you about October 15th of last year. That was a rainy evening. Do you remember that night?" Emma's voice dropped. "Yes, ma'am." "Can you tell us where you were that evening?" "In my bedroom. I was waiting for my daddy to come home from work. I was looking out my window." "What did you see?" Emma took a deep breath, exactly as Detective Rodriguez had coached her. "Start from the beginning. Tell it like a story." "I saw Dr. Chen walking on the sidewalk. She had a red raincoat. Then I saw a car coming really fast. Too fast. It was dark blue." "What happened next?" "The car hit Dr. Chen." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed steady. "She flew in the air and landed on the street. The car stopped. The car stopped. Yes, ma'am. The brake lights came on. It stopped for a little bit. This was crucial testimony. If Webb had stopped, he knew he'd hit someone. Gomez pressed on. What happened after the car stopped? The driver got out. He walked over and looked at Dr. Chen lying there. Then he looked up, at my window, at me. The courtroom was utterly silent. You could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights, the scratch of the court reporter's fingers on her keyboard, nothing else. How long did he look at you, Emma? 3 seconds, I counted. 1, 2, 3. Then what happened? He ran back to his car and drove away really fast. Gomez walked to the evidence table and picked up Emma's drawings. Emma, after that night, did you draw pictures of what you saw? Every night. I couldn't stop seeing it in my head. Your Honor, I'd like to enter Exhibits 12 through 37 into evidence, witness drawings by Emma Martinez. Judge Morrison nodded, so entered. Gomez held up several drawings for the jury to see: the blue SUV with the distinctive dent, the partial license plate, the driver's face. Emma, did you see the license plate? Part of it. 7. KB, something I couldn't see. 3. Did you see the driver's face? Yes, ma'am. Emma's voice was barely a whisper now. Emma, is the person you saw that night in this courtroom today? Emma's eyes moved slowly across the room. They landed on Marcus Webb at the defense table. Webb shifted uncomfortably, unable to meet her gaze. Yes. Can you point to him, please? Emma raised one small finger, pointing directly at Webb. That's him, the man with the beard and glasses. Let the record show the witness has identified the defendant, Marcus Webb, Gomez said. No further questions, Your Honor. Judge Morrison looked at the defense table. Your witness, Mr. Hartley. Richard Hartley stood, buttoning his suit jacket with deliberate slowness. He approached the witness stand with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, the smile of a predator sizing up prey. Hello, Emma. His voice was syrupy sweet, condescending. You seem like a very smart little girl. Emma said nothing, watching him warily. You like to draw, don't you? You draw a lot in school. Sometimes. Do you draw from your imagination? Make up stories with your pictures? Objection. Gomez stood. Relevance. Goes to credibility, Your Honor. I'll allow it, but get to the point, Mr. Hartley. Emma, do you watch television? Sometimes. What shows do you watch? Cartoons. Sometimes. Do you ever have trouble telling the difference between what's real and what's on TV? Like, do you ever imagine things that didn't really happen? Emma's brow furrowed. No. No, never. You've never had a dream that seemed real. I have dreams, but I know they're dreams when I wake up. Hartley smiled, packing now. But on that night, October 15th, it was dark, wasn't it? And raining very hard. Yes. And you were looking through a window, with rain on it, from the second floor. Yes, but I could see. Could you really, Emma? Could you really see clearly through rain and darkness from that far away? Emma's small voice hardened. Yes, sir. The streetlight was on. I saw everything. Hartley pulled out a photograph. Emma, is this a picture of a dark blue SUV? Emma studied it carefully. The courtroom leaned forward collectively. This was the moment. Would she identify any blue SUV? Would her memory hold? Several seconds passed. Emma's eyes moved from the photo to Marcus Webb and back again. No, she said finally. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. No, Hartley's voice rose with theatrical surprise. This isn't the car. No, sir, that's not it. Then how can you be so sure? Because that car doesn't have the dent, Emma interrupted, her voice suddenly clear and strong. She pointed at Webb. But I remember him. Hartley's smile faltered. Emma, you can't possibly. I remember his face, Emma continued, her words coming faster now, stronger, as if a dam had broken. Because after he hit Dr. Chen, he stopped the car. He got out. He looked down at her lying in the street. He stood there for a long time just looking. And then Emma's eyes locked onto Webb's, and across the distance of the courtroom, it was as if they were back on that rainy night, staring at each other through glass and darkness. And then he looked up at my window, right at me. We looked at each other. I counted 1, 2, 3 seconds. I saw his face clearly. The streetlight was shining right on him. He had a beard and glasses, and he looked scared. And I was scared too, because I thought he might come after me. But he didn't. He just ran back to his car and drove away. He left Dr. Chen there in the rain. He left her to die. The courtroom exploded. Order! Judge Morrison's gavel cracked like thunder. Order in this court. But the chaos had already erupted. Reporters scribbled frantically. Gasps and whispers filled the gallery. David Chen was openly weeping. And Marcus Webb's face had gone completely white. Because Emma's words had done what months of investigation couldn't. She'd proven that Webb had stopped, had looked, had known exactly what he'd done, and had chosen to run anyway. Hartley stood frozen, his carefully constructed defense crumbling around him. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "Mr. Hartley," Judge Morrison's voice cut through the noise, "do you have further questions for this witness?" Hartley looked at Emma, this tiny girl who just demolished his case with the simple, devastating truth, and for once in his career, he had no response. "No, Your Honor," he said quietly. "No further questions." Recess that followed Emma's testimony felt like stepping out of a pressure cooker. Judge Morrison had called for a 15-minute break, but the chaos in the hallway lasted much longer. Reporters shouted questions that no one answered. David Chen embraced his parents, all of them sobbing with a mixture of grief and vindication. Emma sat in a private witness room with her parents, drinking apple juice with shaking hands, not fully understanding that she just changed everything. In a small conference room down the hall, Richard Hartley faced his worst nightmare, a client who was falling apart. Marcus Webb sat with his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. "She remembered," he kept saying over and over. "That little girl remembered everything. 3 seconds. I only looked for 3 seconds." "Marcus, shut up," Hartley snapped, though his usual commanding tone was absent. For the first time in his 30-year career, he felt like he was drowning. "Don't say another word." But Webb couldn't stop. The dam had broken. "I stopped, Richard. I got out. I saw her there bleeding, and I knew she was dying, but I panicked. My license was suspended. I had that DUI pending. I thought if I just left, if no one saw." "Stop talking." Hartley's voice rose to a shout. "But someone did see. That little girl saw everything." Webb looked up, his eyes red and wild. "Do you know what it's been like? Every night for 4 months I see her face. Not Dr. Chen's, the girl's. Those 3 seconds when we looked at each other, I knew then that someone saw what I did. I knew." Hartley loosened his tie, feeling the case, and his reputation, slipping through his fingers like sand. Emma's testimony had been devastating. Worse, it had been truthful in a way that juries instinctively recognized. No coaching could produce that kind of genuine, detailed recall. No 7-year-old could fabricate such specific, damning information. And then there was the matter that Hartley's investigator had rushed to tell him during the break. "Marcus, listen to me very carefully," Hartley said, sitting down heavily. During Emma's testimony, the prosecution pulled additional evidence. Security footage from a gas station on Broadway, 2 miles from the scene. Webb's face went even paler. "What?" "The footage shows your Explorer still blue before you repainted it at 6:54 p.m. on October 15th. 7 minutes after the accident. The timestamp is clear. The damage to your front end is visible. And Marcus," Hartley's voice dropped, "the camera caught your face, clear as day. You're checking your rearview mirror every few seconds looking panicked. One of the detectives just enhanced the image. You can see blood on your windshield." Webb made a sound like a wounded animal. "Oh God, oh God." The prosecution has you dead to rights. That footage, combined with Emma's testimony about you stopping and looking, you're done. They can prove you knew you hit someone. They can prove you fled. They can prove you tried to cover it up by repainting the car. What are my options? Webb's voice was barely a whisper. Hartley steepled his fingers, his mind racing through scenarios, all of them bad. Best case, we take a plea, right now, before that footage gets shown to the jury. Because once they see it, once they see you in that gas station with blood on your windshield, checking over your shoulder like a guilty man, he shook his head. The jury will crucify you. What kind of plea? Vehicular manslaughter, leaving the scene of an accident, tampering with evidence. I might be able to negotiate 8 to 12 years with possibility of parole in 6. 8 to 12 years, Webb's voice cracked. Marcus, you're looking at vehicular homicide charges if this goes to the jury. That's 15 to 25 years minimum, and with that little girl's testimony, with the gas station footage, you'll get the maximum. The jury will want blood. Webb buried his face in his hands again. I didn't mean to kill her. I was just driving. She stepped out and I couldn't stop in time. But you did stop. That's the problem. You stopped, you looked, and you made a choice. The worst choice. Hartley stood, straightening his jacket. I need to talk to Ada Gomez. If we're doing this, we're doing it now. 20 minutes later, Judge Morrison reconvened court in chambers rather than the open courtroom. Present were Hartley, Webb, Gomez, Detective Rodriguez, and David Chen, who'd insisted on being there. Your Honor, Hartley began, his voice stripped of its usual bravado, my client wishes to change his plea. Gomez felt relief and satisfaction flood through her in equal measure. The people are willing to hear what the defense proposes. For the next 30 minutes they negotiated. Hartley fought for 8 years. Gomez demanded 15. They settled at 12 years with possibility of parole after 8 for good behavior. Webb would plead guilty to vehicular manslaughter, leaving the scene of a fatal accident and evidence tampering. Throughout it all, David Chen sat silently, tears streaming down his face. When the terms were finalized, Judge Morrison turned to him. Mr. Chen, this is unusual, but under the circumstances, would you like to say anything before I accept this plea? David Chen stood slowly, looking at Marcus Webb for the first time since the trial began. Webb couldn't meet his eyes. You took my wife, David's voice shook with emotion. You took my children's mother. You took a brilliant doctor who saved lives every single day, and then you ran. You didn't call for help. You didn't try to save her. You just ran and tried to hide what you'd done. Webb's shoulders heaved with sobs. But you know what the worst part is, David continued. A 7-year-old girl had to carry your secret. For 3 months, that child lived in fear, drew pictures every night, had nightmares, because you were too much of a coward to face what you'd done. She had more courage in one moment than you've had in your entire life. I'm sorry, Webb choked out. I'm so sorry. I was scared. I panicked. You were scared, David's voice rose. My wife was dying in the street and you were scared. My sons ask me every single day where their mommy is and you were scared. Mr. Chen, Judge Morrison said gently, I understand your anger. He deserves to rot in prison for the rest of his life, David said, his voice breaking. But I also have children who need closure, who need to stop wondering if the man who killed their mother will ever be caught. So I'm agreeing to this plea. Not for him, for my boys, for Sarah, and for Emma, that brave little girl who gave us justice when she could have stayed silent. Judge Morrison turned to Webb. Mr. Webb, do you understand the terms of this plea agreement? Yes, Your Honor. And you understand that by accepting this plea, you're admitting guilt to vehicular manslaughter, leaving the scene of a fatal accident and evidence tampering. Yes, Your Honor. Do you accept these terms? Webb took a shuddering breath. For 4 months, he'd told himself he might get away with it, that the evidence was circumstantial, that no one could prove anything for certain. But 3 seconds of eye contact with a 7-year-old girl had destroyed those delusions. "Yes," he whispered, "I accept I'm guilty." The courtroom reconvened 30 minutes later. The gallery buzzed with confusion. Why were they back so soon? What had happened during recess? Judge Morrison's gavel silenced them. "This court has received a change of plea from the defendant. Mr. Webb, please stand." Webb stood on shaking legs, Hartley beside him. "You wish to change your plea to guilty on all charges?" "Yes, Your Honor." Gasps erupted through the courtroom. Emma, sitting with her parents in the front row, didn't fully understand what was happening, but she saw David Chen collapse into his father's arms, sobbing. Judge Morrison continued, "Marcus Webb, you are hereby sentenced to 12 years in the California Department of Corrections, with possibility of parole after 8 years. You will also pay restitution to the Chen family and are permanently banned from holding a driver's license in the state of California. Bailiff, remand the defendant into custody." As guards moved forward to handcuff Webb, he turned to look at the gallery. His eyes found Emma, the little girl whose 3-second memory had unraveled his life. "I'm sorry," he mouthed, tears streaming down his face. Emma said nothing. She just held her father's hand and watched as the man from her nightmares was led away in chains. It was finally over. 6 months after Marcus Webb was led away in handcuffs, Sacramento looked different to Emma Martinez. Not physically. The streets were the same, her house unchanged. Lincoln Elementary still sat on the corner of Elm and Fifth. But something fundamental had shifted, like the world had tilted on its axis and settled into a new, better position. The morning started like any other Saturday, pancakes with her dad, cartoons with her little brother Diego, her mother humming in the kitchen. But today was special. Today, Emma would stand on the steps of the Sacramento County Courthouse one more time, not as a frightened witness, but as something else entirely. The courthouse steps were crowded, but this time with celebration instead of tragedy. A small stage had been erected, decorated with blue and yellow ribbons, blue for justice, yellow for hope. Mayor Jennifer Williams stood at the podium, her voice amplified by speakers. "Today, we gather to honor extraordinary courage," the mayor said, her eyes finding Emma in the front row. 6 months ago, a 7-year-old girl did what many adults would have been too afraid to do. She spoke up. She told the truth. And in doing so, she not only brought justice for Dr. Sarah Chen and her family, but she reminded us all that heroism has no age requirement. Emma sat between her parents, wearing her favorite purple dress. Her hands were folded in her lap, and though her cheeks flushed with the attention, there was something different about her now. The haunted look that had shadowed her eyes for months was gone. She could sleep through the night. She could laugh again. Detective Rodriguez sat in the second row, watching with pride as the little girl who'd cracked his impossible case received recognition she so deeply deserved. In his pocket, he carried one of Emma's original drawings, the one showing Webb's face. He'd asked to keep it, and it now hung in his office, a reminder that witnesses come in all sizes and that persistence pays off. "Emma Martinez," Mayor Williams continued, "your bravery sparked something remarkable in our community. Because of you, California has passed new legislation, Emma's Law, which establishes enhanced protections for child witnesses and creates mandatory training for attorneys on how to question minors in court." The crowd applauded. Emma's cheeks grew redder. "Your testimony has become required viewing in law schools across the state. You've shown us that truth spoken with courage can move mountains, stop courts, and change lives." Ada Patricia Gomez stepped forward, carrying a wooden plaque and a medal suspended from a blue ribbon. "Emma, on behalf of the Sacramento District Attorney's Office and the California justice system, I present you with the Civic Courage Award. Thank you for being braver than any of us could have asked." Emma stood on shaky legs and walked to the podium. She needed a step stool to reach the microphone. When she spoke, her voice was small but steady. the same voice that had stopped a courtroom cold 6 months ago. "Thank you," she said simply. "I was really scared, but Dr. Chen was always nice to me, and her family needed to know the truth. Detective Rodriguez told me that doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's always worth it." She paused, looking out at the crowd. "If you see something wrong, even if you're scared, you should tell someone, because your voice matters, even if you're little like me." The applause was thunderous. In the crowd, David Chen stood with his 2 sons, both boys wearing their mother's favorite blue. Tears streamed down David's face, but for the first time since Sarah's death, they were tears of gratitude rather than just grief. After the ceremony, David approached Emma with his boys. 9-year-old James and 7-year-old Matthew had drawn pictures for Emma, colorful drawings of flowers and sunshine, so different from the dark images Emma had once drawn every night. "Emma," David knelt down to her level, "these are from my boys. They wanted to thank you for being brave for their mom." Emma took the drawings carefully, studying them. "They're beautiful. Because of you, we got answers, we got justice, we got closure." David's voice cracked. "You gave my family peace, Emma. You gave us the ability to start healing. We'll never forget what you did." Matthew, who was Emma's age, spoke up shyly. "You're the bravest person I know." Emma smiled, a real, genuine smile. "Your mom was brave too. She helped people every day. That's brave." David pulled Emma into a gentle hug, and Emma hugged him back, both of them understanding something profound. That healing doesn't erase pain, but courage can light the way through darkness. Later that afternoon, the Chen family announced the establishment of the Dr. Sarah Chen Memorial Scholarship in Emma's name. It would provide full college tuition for students pursuing careers in law, justice, or public service, young people who, like Emma, wanted to make the world more just. Sarah believed in the power of ordinary people to do extraordinary things, David told reporters. Emma embodied that belief. This scholarship will help others follow in both their footsteps. Back at Lincoln Elementary on Monday morning, Mrs. Patterson noticed the change in Emma immediately. The quiet, withdrawn girl who'd sat alone for months was laughing with friends at recess. Her drawings were colorful again: butterflies, rainbows, families holding hands. "What are you drawing, Emma?" Mrs. Patterson asked, kneeling beside her student. Emma held up her picture. It showed a small girl in a yellow dress standing on courthouse steps, surrounded by smiling people. "It's me being brave," Emma explained. "Detective Rodriguez says I should remember good things, not just scary things." "I think that's wonderful advice." That evening, in a different part of Sacramento, Marcus Webb sat in his prison cell, his 8th week of incarceration. He'd started writing letters. One to David Chen, returned unopened. One to Emma's parents, also returned. And finally one to Emma herself, though he'd never send it. "Dear Emma," it began, "you were braver than me. You were 7 years old, and you were braver than a 42-year-old man. I will spend every day of my sentence thinking about that. Thinking about how I had so many chances to do the right thing, and I chose cowardice every time. While you, just a child, chose courage. I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry for what I put you through. I hope someday you can forgive me, though I don't deserve it. You are extraordinary." He would keep the letter in his cell, a reminder of the little girl whose 3-second memory had changed everything. Meanwhile, Detective Rodriguez worked late at his desk, as always. But now, when he looked at cold cases and impossible investigations, he didn't feel hopeless. He looked at Emma's drawing on his wall and remembered. Truth has no age limit. Courage comes in small packages, and sometimes justice needs only a witness willing to speak. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma's mother. "Emma drew you a thank you picture. Can we drop it off?" He smiled and texted back, "I'd be honored." And in her bedroom on Maple Street, Emma Martinez stood at her window, the same window where her nightmare had begun. But tonight, there was no fear. She looked out at the streetlights, at the neighbors walking their dogs, at the peaceful evening settling over her street. Mr. Hoppers sat on her bed, and beside him, the medal from the mayor and drawings from the Chen boys. Emma touched the window glass gently, no longer seeing the horror of that rainy October night, but instead seeing possibility. She was 8 now, still small, still just a kid. But she'd learned something that would shape the rest of her life. That speaking truth takes courage, that courage can come from anywhere, and that even the smallest voice, when raised at the right moment, can echo loud enough to change the world. Emma turned from the window, climbed into bed, and fell asleep without nightmares. Outside, the street was quiet and peaceful, watched over by a little girl who'd proven that heroes don't need to be big. They just need to be brave. The end.